Hi, and welcome to week 8 of K Club. This week is going to involve more administrative sort of things, but it involves a long list of homework. So, today we're going to talk about your grant title, the inclusion enrollment report you'll be submitting, letters of support from collaborators, contributors, and consultants, 3 letters of reference, and a bunch of action items related to these things. So in terms of K application sections, as you can see in the career box, we're getting more and more red in there, which means we're almost done covering the career sections of your grant. In terms of research, we're going to touch on the inclusion enrollment report, and we're going to talk about external letters of recommendation in addition to your mentorship team. First, though, time to think of a grant title for your K application if you haven't yet. It can be up to 200 characters long, and you can include research keywords like cognitive control, depression, autism spectrum disorder. Place the most important words first. Keep it short. Point to the outcome of whatever your grant is that you're studying. Avoid unnecessary words. Avoid punctuation, including semicolons. And brainstorm ideas with peers, colleagues, and mentors. Here's one example that I used for an R01, and I didn't think of it. My boss, Dr. Paulus, came up with it, but it's catchy. Plasticity of aversive salience in opioid use disorder. So this grant evaluates whether early abstinence from drugs is linked to changes in negative emotional processing over time in people meeting criteria for opioid use disorder. It's short, it's to the point, there's no extra punctuation, unnecessary words. I'd say I only have 2 that aren't like important keywords, of and in, so not too bad. But it's time for you to think of a title. Now it's time to think about study enrollment as well. So you need to specify how many subjects you plan to enroll in your study. By now you should have a decent idea of your ballpark sample size you need to detect effects based on your approach section's power analysis. However, you may have needed to modify this number based on your budget limitations. So just a reminder that you only get 20K for research funds for the K99. So how much are you paying subjects per hour and for how many hours? Now you need to start thinking about how you will recruit and enroll subjects as a function of biological, sex, and race ethnicity considerations. Will you base estimates of these things on local population measures? Are these considerations relevant to testing any of your hypotheses? So just a heads up, you're going to be filling something out called an inclusion enrollment report. You'll need to fill this out next week, but I want you thinking about it this week. So as you can see, if you look at the box in the report, there's ethnic categories, not Hispanic or Latino, and Hispanic or Latino. There are biological sex columns, female and male, and there are racial categories. You'll be justifying these numbers that you put in here in your inclusion of women and minorities section next week. So that's why I'm giving you a heads up to start thinking about it this week. For now, you want to make sure that your total number of subjects matches what you say you will recruit in other places in your application, including your specific aims, your approach, and your budget. So do you have enough money allocated for subject payment per year, depending on what your K99 and R00 projects are? Again, this has to do with engaging your frontal lobes and making sure things match up across different sections of your grant. Next up, we're going to cover letters of support from collaborators, contributors, and consultants. So you can Google online. We discussed what these 3 roles are previously, but if you Google NIH definitions of these things, you can get a paragraph about who can be considered each of these roles. Typically, consultants are getting paid on your budget. Collaborators may be providing some expertise, but it's typically not umbrella expertise and it's not for any particular amount of time. It's an as collaborators and contributors are more as needed. So what do you need? So you have the plans and statements of mentor and co-mentors. For collaborators, contributors, and consultants, they are going to write letters that you are going to include and upload in your grant. And the max for these letters altogether is 6 pages. Again, don't worry about the page limit this second. But first, you want to identify collaborators, contributors, and consultants involved with the proposed research and career development program who aren't already included as a mentor or a co-mentor. So the letter should briefly describe their anticipated contributions and document their role and willingness to participate in your project. The letter should also briefly describe research materials, data, guidance, or advice that each person will provide. So this should match up with your training plan, essentially. Letters from consultants should include rates and charges for consulting services. Excuse me. Also ask these people for your NIH biosketches in case you need them. So separate from the letters from consultants, collaborators, and contributors, you also need 3 letters of reference for your grant. These people should not be mentors, co-mentors, consultants, or collaborators on your K. They should be separate. They could be your dissertation advisor, a professor, chair of your Ph.D. department, your current employer, etc. So if you go to grants.nih.gov, they have a link for reference letters and what they should look like. But briefly, these letters should address your potential to become an independent research scientist, evidence of your originality, adequacy of your scientific background, the quality of the research endeavors or your publications to date, if any, your commitment to health-oriented research, and the need for your further research experience and training. And you can add any additional related comments that they may wish to provide. These people submit their letter about you through ERA Commons separately, so these letters are not submitted by you as part of your K application. And you, as the person asking for these letters of reference, must carefully follow the SF 424 application guide in terms of the forms, including the time period for when the reference letters will be accepted. So you need to convey all the information to each referee that you ask to write a letter on your behalf. Applications lacking the appropriate required reference letters will not be reviewed. So this is something important that you need to think about now, about asking people to write these letters for you. A note, you do not automatically get to see this letter unless the person wants to share with you what they wrote. This is important. You do not need to compile the letters along with the rest of your K application. So each referee will send in their letter separately for these letters of reference. So you want to email these people your specific aims page, the title of your grant, your CV, and your bio sketch when you ask them if they're willing to write a letter on your behalf of your K application. And send the link from the last slide, you can Google it online, about the letters and explain that they will be submitting the letter themselves and give them a due date for when that letter is due according to your grant deadline. Estimated due date. So despite the small amount of content we covered this week, you have a ton of homework. So you need to brainstorm and devise a title for your K, floated by your primary mentor. Start thinking about your targeted planned enrollment numbers and make sure your total number lines up with what you reported in your other documents. Revise your budget and budget justification section and plans and statements for mentor and co-mentor section based on your primary mentor feedback. Assemble your whole research strategy, so the 6-pager or however long it is at this point, and your candidate information and goals for career development 6-pager or however long it is, and send to your co-mentors if you haven't already. In addition, send co-mentors their respective plans and statement sections and request a copy of their NIH biosketch that addresses their roles in your project. Or ask them if they want you to edit their section A to reflect their roles in your project. Discuss with your primary mentor about the need for any collaborators or contributors. These are typically unpaid. Any consultants, so these are typically paid, and so you need to allocate money for them in your budget, in your training plan, and you can add info as what they're helping you with in your training plan. Email these people, so collaborators, contributors, consultants, asking if they are willing to be on your grant. And if this is for a consultant, ask their going hourly rate for services to add to your budget and budget justification. If these people say yes to be involved, ask if you would like to provide them some language for their letter of support. Request a due date for their letter of support. So their letter of support you're dealing with. It's only the letters of reference that you're not dealing with from outside referees who have been involved in your training. So for collaborators, contributors, and consultants, provide your specific aims in NIH BioSketch. Then, separately, for your 3 letters of reference, email 3 people to ask if they will submit a letter of reference to NIH on your behalf. So they're doing the submitting, it's not part of your grant. Include your CV, NIH BioSketch, K-title, and specific aims page, along with the NIH link for letter writers, and give them a due date. And good luck with all this stuff. See you next week.